Welcome to Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning for Thursday, August 6th. I'm your host, Tom Orr. The Ball State game in 30 days, the game against Michigan in 114 days. Our friends at Jeff Ruby's of Columbus, proudly offering nationally acclaimed U.S.D.A. prime steaks, seafood and sushi, impeccable service, live entertainment, and an attention to detail that is simply unmatched. Just go to jeffruby.com/Columbus to check out the menu and make a reservation today. All right, today is the start of fall camp for Ohio State. Yes, it is finally here, which means the season really right around the corner. You heard at the start of the show how many days away the Ball State game is, just 30. We're getting there. Going to welcome in our buddy Tony Gerdeman of BuckeyeInsiders.com to talk about three storylines that we're going to be watching on the defensive side of the ball this fall. And Tony, I think the first one that I wanted to talk to you about was the defensive ends, because it feels like this is a real, could be a huge pleasant surprise for Ohio State. Could be a spot where you see a little bit of a drop-off from last year. And what you see from Ohio State's defensive ends this fall could go a long way towards determining what does a defense really look like this fall.
Yeah, for sure. And it'll be interesting to see how many are on the field at the same time. We know in that penny front, they've got five guys on the line. Sometimes that fifth guy can be a stand-up linebacker like an Arvell Reese.
Don't say anything else about that, because guess what? You're never going to guess what my second storyline to watch is going to be. But don't say anything more about that right now.
Understood. Strike it from the record. No, but could we see, Kenyatta Jackson played a lot of three technique last year in that alignment. Could that be Bo Atkinson this year? Could it still be Kenyatta Jackson? And could there be two other defensive ends out there as well? Because there are a number of different body types that they can use to get out there. And, Quay Rusaw, for instance, could be that stand-up kind of guy. And not that he's funny. I'm not saying he's a clown. But there are a number of different options that they have. And so that's one that I'm very interested to see, because we know they've done well in recruiting. They've done well in developing generally. But now they've got some young guys that they need to rely on and some new guys that they need to rely on. So what does that look like? And, they've had such veterans over the past few years when you've got Kenyatta Jackson and Caden Curry as basically the backups for 3 years, four guys who were 3-year starters. And there just wasn't much else there. And now there are more bodies and more guys have to step up. And, Kenyatta Jackson is going to be simultaneously passing the torch while carrying it into battle as well.
Yeah, it feels like there's a lot of potential answers there, but no sure things other than Kenyatta Jackson, who feels like he's about as sure of a thing as you're going to have there. Other than him, yeah, it feels like there's just sort of a lot of question marks, and they're hoping to turn those into exclamation points, but we will have to see. So, as you wisely foreshadowed there, second storyline to watch, the alignment of the defensive line. And you talked about it in terms of some of the defensive ends and some of their stuff. I also am kind of looking at the interior of that defensive line, where when we were sort of going through stuff during the transfer portal portion of the season, we said, okay, James Smith and Edric Houston, those are going to be your three techs, and you've got John from UCF. Walker, yes, John Walker from UCF, and you've got Will Smith, and those are going to be your nose tackles. And then as the spring went along, it was like, no, not necessarily. Maybe James Smith can play some nose. Maybe you're going to see James Smith and Edric Houston next to each other. You could see three guys potentially, of your interior guys playing together at the same time. I think the different that on top of having defensive ends who go, basically from Quay Rusaw, who's, kind of a little halfway between a linebacker and a defensive end, up to like a Kenyatta Jackson or a Bo Atkinson. It just feels like there's a lot of different possibilities to mix and match there.
Certainly there are. And it was interesting because John Walker comes in and you just assume he's the nose tackle. James Smith comes in, you assume he's a three tech. And then we get the spring heights and weights, and John Walker was down about 20 pounds and James Smith was up about 15. And now you've got Smith being heavier than Walker. You've got Will Smith, who has played nose tackle, checking in about 292 pounds, which is about where Edric Houston checks in. And we know that Larry Johnson likes to put in lighter, quicker nose tackles, has no issue doing that. We've seen it with Michael Hall and Robert Landers and, of course, Will Smith. And yet, you get somebody like Caden McDonald, and who is a true nose tackle. Yeah, go ahead and put him in there because he's disruptive. So it was interesting to see James Smith get so much time at nose and say he's learning both. And if you're doing that, there's interest in putting Edric Houston and James Smith on the field together. And we know that they can do that with the penny front, or even in just a basic 4-man front. You can have them side by side. And I think that's an intriguing look and makes them overall deeper as well when you've got somebody with that kind of versatility. But, John Walker has that same kind of versatility. He was working at both. And so you can mix and match there. But yeah, I'm with you. And then what does that look like in the penny front is John Walker or Will Smith the nose, while you've got James Smith and Edric Houston as the 3 techs. Like there's a bunch of different things that they can do, which, boy, if you tell Matt Patricia, hey, there's a bunch of different things you can do with all of these different talented players, he's going to be like, yeah, let's do that.
Yeah, we always talk about how Matt Patricia is just seemingly always in a great mood, and then you look around the defensive, position groups, and it's like, yeah, okay, I get it. Like I understand why you're always in a good mood if with these guys to work with. The next question and the third question and final question that I have going into the fall for Ohio State is the linebacker group, and this is one where you've got lots of possibilities. You've got lots of talented players. I think Peyton Pierce is about as sure a thing because you've seen him do it at Ohio State. He's kind of the surest thing probably they have in that linebacker room. And then you got the really talented guy in Christian Allegro who transferred in, and you've got the 2 guys who were true freshmen last year who feel like they should be ready to take the next step in Riley Pettyjohn and TJ Alford. You've got all sorts of talent in that room, but just how is that going to get divided up? How is that playing time going to get divided up? And sort of related to the last 2 things we talked about, if they're changing the number, you're not just playing your typical 4-down defensive line all the time. What does that do to how many linebackers they're playing and what kind of things they're asking their linebackers to do? Because that'll determine which guys are on the field.
Exactly. And what linebackers are capable of doing some of that Sam stuff that Arvell Reese did on the line of scrimmage, some of the stuff that we saw Christian Allegro do at Wisconsin as well. But yet both of those guys could also play will linebacker next to the middle linebacker off the ball. So who do they have that can do that? We saw, TJ Alford did some of it in the spring. I think that's just part of the learning process. Who knows how much he's going to be there. But what I'll be watching the first 3 days as much as I can is to see what Riley Pettyjohn is doing. And how much off the ball, how much on the ball. Is he on the ball at all, like on the line of scrimmage at all, or is he strictly off the ball? And I think that's going to be one of the interesting things to just keep an eye on is who can play multiple spots, which means if you can play multiple spots, then you can be out there in a 3 linebacker look, regardless of who else is out there with you. So if you're limited and you can only be a will, then you're going to come out at times. But if you can be a will and a Sam, then you've got opportunity to play on every snap. So that's one of the things that I'll be watching. And nobody is as big as Arvell Reese other than Christian Allegro, but I want to see if those guys, if they still kind of put them in that role, which they probably will the first 3 days, just to find out what they need, and they need to know how much Riley Pettyjohn can do, and they're going to find out as much as they can in the first 5 to 10 practices.
So there you go. 3 storylines we're going to be watching on defense as the Ohio State Buckeyes open fall camp on Thursday. The team from Buckeye Insiders will be there Thursday, Friday, Saturday, 3 full days of practice. Should be a lot to learn, a lot to see, and a lot to tell you about at BuckeyeInsiders.com. That's where we got our team covering the team, got our team covering recruiting, we got our team covering scheme, even cover some basketball there as well. There's been some basketball news this week in addition to the football news. Want to talk about it with us? The great place to do that is at BuckeyeInsiders.com. That's where we love to talk to our members on the Insiders Board presented by Jeff Ruby's Columbus. Really, really fun and active community. Got some fun activities and events planned for our members this fall as well. You don't want to miss out on that. So you can sign up today at BuckeyeInsiders.com. And thanks again to our friends at Jeff Ruby's Columbus, the award-winning upscale steakhouse in downtown Columbus, named one of the top 50 steakhouses in America by Food Network. Just go to jeffruby.com/Columbus to check out the menu and make a reservation today. That will do it for today. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.